Awesome.
Take it away, Thuba.
So hopefully I won't take too long, but I will just talk about the DARE scheme. So it's the Disability Access Route to Education. Some of you may have heard of it already. Some are not too sure what it is or how to go about it. So I'll just get into a bit of detail about what it is. So what I'll get into is a bit of a surface level. So I do encourage you after this presentation to go ahead and do more research if you have to before you apply and to get started, as there are timelines and you don't want to be missing any deadlines. So I'll get started. Everyone who's here, you're probably thinking about going to college and you're thinking about where you'd like to go and some of the key things that would affect your college experience, which is great. So you're wondering, how do I get there? How do I apply? Through the CAO, and the DARE application is part of that. So as I said, some of you have heard of DARE, some of you haven't, and I'll touch on that, what it is, what it's all about, in the next coming slides. So you're probably wondering where you want to go to college. So with the DARE scheme, there are participating colleges that you can apply to, and you can basically get supports through your DARE eligibility. So these are some of the colleges that you can apply to or go to and study, and Maynooth University is one of them. And then, as I say, that there are different colleges, participating colleges, and for more information or to know which colleges are there at your own time, you can go on the accesscollege.ie website and see the participating colleges. And in each of these participating colleges, there is a representative, a DARE representative. You can call the colleges and they can explain to you how you can activate your supports, so to say, once you get into that college, or how the supports are delivered for you as a student with a disability. And just to encourage, Lorraine also touched on some of the things about college clubs and SOCs, just to encourage you that there is something for you in college. So you might be thinking, should I go to college? Is college for me? I just want to encourage you and put you at ease that there are supports for you, and don't let the thoughts that you have about, oh, should I go? Will I get supports? Don't let that stop you, because college is there and you can avail of supports, and there is something available for everybody in college. What I would encourage you to do is to do your research on what kind of course you want to do, which college offers that course, and just look into the kind of supports that they would have for you. Again, clubs and SOCs, we cannot overemphasize this. It's a good way to build your social capital, and that's where you'd meet other people who are probably living with disabilities and are still making the most of their college life. I know I have met a president of a society who's got ASD, and he was just explaining to me how great it is, and it's good to meet other people who are living with disabilities who would be like you. And as Lisa said in the beginning of the student panel, that it's always encouraging and empowering to see someone else who is living with a disability making the most of their college experience. So I'll get into what exactly there is. So it is the Disability Access Route to Education. So it is an alternative admission scheme for school leavers whose disabilities have had a negative impact on their secondary level education. So what DARE does is that it offers reduced points to school leavers. So I'll get into more detail what I mean by reduced points and how it works. So if you've had a negative impact or your disability has impacted your participation in college, you can apply for the DARE scheme. So there's an eligibility criteria, which I'll get into as well. But this is to just give a brief overview of what DARE is. So basically there are supports regardless of your disability that will level the playing field, that you're able to go into that level education and participate at the same way as your peers. So there is an equity, there's that equity piece that helps you to get or supports you to get into that level education regardless of your second level education experience or the negative impact your disability might have had. And then you're probably wondering, or if you have heard of DARE, should I apply? Is it worth it? And I know sometimes forms can be something that's cumbersome and people are like, oh, there's so much documentation I have to gather. I would like to encourage you to apply if you have a disability and if it has affected you negatively in your second level education. So as I said, if your disability has had a negative impact on your educational performance, you should probably think of applying. And if you think you may not be able to meet the points of your preferred course due to the impact of your disability, you should probably consider applying. And if you're under the age of 23 as at the 1st of January in 2024, you should consider applying. So the disabilities that are eligible for consideration under the DARE scheme are listed on the accesscollege.ie website, and they are listed here. So this includes ASD, those who are blind, deaf or hard of hearing, DCD, mental health condition, neurological conditions, physical disabilities, and significant ongoing illnesses. So there is documentation that you would have to provide to verify as verification of your disability. And I'll get into that in more detail in the next coming slides. So in terms of your DARE eligibility criteria, or the DARE eligibility criteria that you have to meet in order to be considered for a positive DARE outcome, there's two things that you have to have. So you have to meet the educational impact criteria and meet the evidence of disability criteria. And applicants must provide the required evidence of disability and an educational impact statement from their school to be considered for DARE. So those are the two things that I will get into more detail in the next slides. So what is an educational impact, or what is educational impact? So if your disability has affected the following points, I hope I'm not moving too quickly. If I am, I hope one of you can just send me a chat to say slow down. But it's just those points there. If you have received intervention or support in post-primary, if your disability has impacted your attendance or regularly disrupted your school day, or if your school experience and well-being has been affected, your learning or sitting your exams has been affected, or there's been a significant impact, that is what is called an educational impact. And then required for applicants with dyslexia and dyscalculia is that if it is severely impacting your literacy and your numeracy skills. So I'll get into more detail about the application or the requirements for dyslexia and dyscalculia and other evidence of disability. So the next thing then would be thinking, what are the benefits of DARE? If I do apply for DARE, I do get DARE, what are the benefits of DARE? So there is the reduced points. What reduced points means basically is that if you say you're going for a course that is requiring about 366 points and you get 356, you could be offered the place on the reduced points with those low points. But it is important to note that you need to meet the entry requirements of that course to begin with. So if you're, say, going for a biology course and the entry requirements are maths and science and English, you do have to meet those entry requirements. However, if the points are 366 and you have attained 356, there is a chance that you can get the place or offered the place on reduced points. So the amount of points on a particular course is reduced. The amount of points it is reduced by is dependent on a few factors. So it depends on the number of places that are on the course, the number of reserved DARE places. So each course has a reserved number of DARE places. And then it also depends on the number of DARE eligible applicants. So it can get really competitive over the years, and that will determine the that amount of which the points are reduced to, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And then other benefits of DARE are that once you get into college, once you get into, you're offered your place, you register, you do your needs assessment, as I think Stephen mentioned during the students panel. There are supports that you can avail of, and Lorraine did mention that they are funded by the FSD, Fund for Students with Disabilities. So there are orientation programs, there are learning supports, and there's assistive technology or library support that you can avail of. Exam accommodations, Lorraine I think touched on this as well, and then you get the ESW, which is the educational support worker, which will coordinate your transport if you need transport, if you need a PA, and all those kind of supports are coordinated once you have your DARE eligibility. It is important to note that if you don't have DARE eligibility, it doesn't mean that you will not get supports. It doesn't mean that you'll be excluded from getting the supports that you need. You will get the supports. All you have to do is to link in with the access office of your college, let them know of your disability, the disclosure piece, let them know of the supports that you will require, and needs assessment will be done to kind of ascertain what kind of supports you need, and you can link in with your advisor. But those are the benefits of DARE. It's just to make sure that as a student living with a disability, you're able to access your course content better, you're able to participate in third level education just as well as your peers. I hope that makes sense. So you're probably wondering, okay, I do want to apply for DARE. I do want to go this route. How do I go about it? So the CAO has opened, I believe they opened on the 6th of November. So you can apply to the CAO by the 1st of February. So by the 1st of February means that you can do this before. The 1st of February is just when you have to have it done by. So what I would encourage is to review the DARE handbook with your parents, your guardians, somebody else, just to review the handbook. And I'm happy to say that over the years, it has been improved. There's been more information, and especially there's like screenshots of what you can see on the form. And I'll get into more detail once I explain the different sections, that if you want to apply for DARE, you go to this question and there's screenshots of what it would look like. And that is, I believe, great information, and that has come over the years. So the handbook has all the information that you will need. I do encourage you to go over it as much as possible. Another thing that I would encourage is that you start gathering your documentation in a timely fashion. This means that you don't wait until the week before the 15th of February or the 15th of March to start thinking about all the supporting documentation that you need to submit, but start now. It is a process. There are forms that need to be signed by your principal, that need to be signed by your GP. You might need to get an up-to-date psychological report or any report of any sort. Get started now. There are waiting lists for these things, and they may take time. So to avoid missing out on your DARE application or not being able to put in the application, I would encourage you to start working on the application now. And then to submit your educational impact statement and evidence of disability by the 15th of March. As I say, this involves your school filling in some forms, this involves your GP filling in some forms, and you don't want to be left behind because there was a waiting list or you didn't get your form to your school or to your GP on time. So I will get into how you get started, or basically indicate that you want to apply for DARE on your CAO application. So there's what is called the Supplementary Information Form, the SIF. So Section A of the CAO application should be completed. Basically, you should complete or indicate that you want to apply for DARE by the 1st of March by 5 o'clock. You answer yes to the question 1. And I know when I'm going through this, if you haven't looked at any of this, you probably don't understand, or it's not easy to follow, but the handbook will show all of this, which will have the screenshots of what the form will look like. And also just to indicate that if you had applied for DARE and didn't go for your course, you can carry forward your DARE eligibility. So in question 1B, there's an option to tick yes to carry forward your eligibility. So if you need to carry that forward, please do indicate that. And then there's the section B, which is the educational impact statement. This is to be completed by your school, as I said, and sent to the CAO by the 15th of March. So there is a timeline, there are dates, and there is basically a page that shows the timeline of all these things. I would encourage you to print it out if you can, and just stick it somewhere where you can see the timelines and make sure you do not miss any dates, because I am aware that there's a lot of dates that you would need to remember, and sometimes it's easy to just have it somewhere where you can see and just make sure you don't miss the dates. And then there's the evidence of disability, which is to be completed by an appropriate professional. So I'll get into more detail what this is and what it looks like in the next coming slides. And this is also to be sent by the 15th of March. So I know we're going towards Christmas and people are probably thinking Christmas break and you don't want to think about a lot of things, but just Christmas. But if you can get started, before you know it, it will be January, it will be February, and it's March. So it looks like a long way away, but it's considering the documentation, it's not too far. So do get started. And then section D, it applies to not everyone, but some, where you're applying under the dyslexia or dyscalculia, and you do not have a psychological assessment report, you can and you should submit section D, and this is also to be sent to the CAO by the 15th of March. So section B, which is the educational impact statement, this provides information on how your disability has impacted your secondary level education. So the form is available on accesscollege.ie. So at the end of the slide, the website will be there. And if you can right now, you can just Google the website to have a look at what it looks like. All the resources that you need for the DARE application will be on that website. So the educational impact statement is on the website. You download the form, and then there is a checklist. So the checklist is basically to get a sense of how your secondary level education has been impacted. So you complete this section with your school, and then you just, so that they get a sense of how your attendance has been affected, how you have, it has impacted your participation in extracurricular activities, the completion of schoolwork, the rate at which you complete your schoolwork, and how it has impacted your participation, considering that you're also balancing maybe trying to manage a condition or a significant ongoing illness. So your school will complete the rest of the form after you've completed the checklist with them. So my next slide then is to get into what I mean by the school, or who in the school should complete that educational impact statement with you. So it is completed by either of the following that are listed here. So that is your guidance counselor, the learning support teacher, or your head teacher or visiting teacher, or the principal or deputy. The key thing is that the form must be signed and stamped by the school principal or deputy principal. So as I said, there might be a number of people applying for DARE. There might be a number of people wanting their forms to be signed and stamped. You don't want to be caught waiting. I'm not sure how secondary schools will facilitate this, but you don't want to be delayed by a signature or a stamp. So if you can, get the process started as early as possible. And you must return this to the CAO, as I said, by the 15th of March. So the next section will be section C, the evidence of disability. And some colleges, you might have heard, they refer this to the EOD, and it's good to get used to the jargon or the shorthand of these the requirements. So the evidence of disability is, it provides verification of your disability and helps to determine the third level supports that you will need or that need to be facilitated or delivered for you. So you can either, as evidence of disability, you can either provide an existing report or complete section C, which is the evidence of disability form. So you get the form completed, signed, and stamped by the appropriate professional. So once you go on the accesscollege.ie website, the form will be there. There is also a list of the disabilities that I mentioned there in the beginning and the corresponding documentation or the corresponding professional that you would need to get the documentation from. So it needs to be a headed paper. If not, it should be accompanied by their business card. But basically, is to make sure that your documentation is deemed valid by when their application is being reviewed or screened. And then for applicants with dyslexia or dyscalculia, the full psychological assessment of any age would be appropriate. However, if you do not have this, as I said, you can submit the section D of the application, and that can be found on the accesscollege.ie website. So in terms of GP verification, I understand that it can be hard to get your consultant or specialist to sign the form or to fill in the form because of waiting lists, or basically just because there's no time. You can get your GP to fill in the form. However, they should have the appropriate information on file from a consultant or specialist. So sometimes people miss their positive DARE outcome because the GP would have filled in the form, but there is no there's no appropriate information on file accompanying that form filled in by the GP. I hope that makes sense. And then Section C, again, is the evidence of disability. So this is on the age of reports. So as I said, with the dyslexia and the dyscalculia, it can be of any age. So you could have done the report when you were much younger, and it would be still valid when you're applying for college at 18 or 17, whatever the age may be. However, it is important to note that applicants applying under the following categories must provide a report that is less than 3 years old, and that is, it should be dated after the 1st of February 2021. So some of you may need to get an updated report, may need to get some sort of documentation to ensure that you do not miss out on your eligibility. As I said, this may take a while. So if you know that you do have to go and get that updated report, you should start working on that as soon as possible, because I know these things can take time. So ADD, mental health condition, and significant ongoing illness, you do need to provide a report that is less than 3 years old. And then again, on the psychological assessment for dyslexia and dyscalculia, you should provide a full psychological assessment. But if you cannot or do not have that psychological assessment, there is Section D, as I said, the school statement that is in support of your application. And you should also, for applicants with dyslexia or significant literacy difficulties, you must also have 2 literacy attainment scores at or below the 10th percentile. This is a standard score of 81 or below. And then applicants with dyscalculia, this is applicants with significant numeracy difficulties, must also have 1 numeracy attainment score at or below the 10th percentile. This is a standard score of 81 or below as well. And then these attainment scores can be from one or a combination of the following sources. So it can be a school-based attainment testing or attainment tests carried out by a psychologist. And these have to be carried out after the 1st of February. And all applicants must submit an educational impact statement completed by their school. So that is important. You just have to submit the educational impact statement completed by your school. And then just again to reiterate that you should check out the accesscollege.ie. Most of the information that you need, if not all, will be on that website. And I would also like to encourage you to go on the frequently asked questions. I know people usually overlook that on a website, but the frequently asked questions really answer some of the key questions that you feel are not covered maybe in the handbook or in the guidelines or in the resources that are there. And you must post your evidence of disability documentation to the CAO by the 15th of March. So once you see the 1st of March coming, you should probably be rounding up your DARE application. At that point, you should probably be in a good position to have everything submitted, and do keep a copy of all the documents that you post to the CAO. From experience in the Maynooth University Access Office, we've had people call and say, how can I get a hold of the information or the documentation that I sent to the CAO with regards to DARE? It is better off if you have a copy of everything, because it can be hard to get your documentation back, because maybe it's hard to get a contact because there's a lot of people who will be calling at that point. So just to avoid that, do keep a copy of all your documentation. And then section D, which is the school statement for those applying under the dyslexia or dyscalculia and do not have the psychological report. So section D is the school statement that you need to ensure that you have submitted, signed, and stamped by the appropriate staff at your school. And again, I cannot stress this enough. Do your research, go on the website. If you have any questions, it is important to ask the questions early on, not a week before, not a day before the deadline, because at that point, the phone lines are actually going crazy and you don't want to be overwhelmed by the lack of maybe response that you need as urgent as possible. So to avoid all of that, please do your research as early as possible and just pay attention to the deadlines. And some of the helpful tips with regards to your DARE application. As I said, the handbook has been updated, and I feel it has improved a lot over the past few years. Do read it carefully. There's pages that show exactly what the form looks like if you haven't started your application as yet, but do read the handbook carefully and answer yes to get your DARE application started. Answer yes to question 1 on the SIF before 5 p.m. on the 1st of March. As well, ensure to speak to whoever, the staff or whoever you need to speak to in your school early enough. It is your application. It is not the parents' application. It is not the teacher's application. So just to get started on that, taking charge of your kind of educational career, do make sure that you get a push on everything. You do ask the questions, you do go to the right people well before time, and basically get linked in as soon as possible. So if you need to request documentation from your consultant, your GP, or to know who to ask, do ask the questions. And again, keep proof of postage. If you need to appeal your application, this is one of the things that is required, that you have proof of postage. And as well, the deadlines. The deadlines do not move, they do not shift, they do not change. You do have to make sure that you are submitting anything you need to submit before the deadline. I know sometimes people call with different situations. It is difficult to make, basically to have one deadline for one person and a deadline for other people. It is just to make sure that everything is done on time and there is a system on how these things are done. So make sure that you follow the deadline. And then just to get into the common mistakes that affect their eligibility. So as I said, the evidence of disability, sometimes it will be completed by the GP, but the required copy of report by the appropriate professional confirming the diagnosis would not have been provided. So the GP filling in the form, the evidence of disability form, is not enough. There needs to be information on file or documentation on file from the appropriate professional confirming your diagnosis. So if this is not provided, probably you will not get a positive DARE outcome. And then if the reports are out of date, as I said, for certain disabilities like ADHD, mental health, or significant ongoing illness, your report needs to be 3 years of age. And then with the dyslexia and dyscalculia, it can be any age. So just take note of the requirements there. And then reports that are not confirming diagnosis or condition by a consultant. So your report needs to be clear and concise and confirm that diagnosis. And also incorrect professional completing section C form or evidence of disability report. So just again, read the handbook. If you have any questions, ask them now, ask them as soon as possible. If you're not clear, if your situation is different from what is there, and which is possible, do ask the questions, do call the colleges, their representatives in colleges. You can ask the questions, and if your question is complex, it can take a while to find the answer, so do allow for that. Do ask the questions early on. Test details might be missing, so make sure that all the test details are there for dyslexia and dyscalculia, and you can go back on the literacy and attainment scores. There's a sheet there that summarizes what is required and the scores that are required. Do read over that to get a better understanding. And then also forgetting to complete question 1, which is the first step of your DARE application. Make sure as you're doing your CAO application, you do not miss this part. If you wish to apply for DARE, this can be a common thing, which is a mistake that you think, oh, I wouldn't make that mistake, but it can happen. So just go over your application, review your application, make sure you've completed the question 1 of the supplementary information form by 5 p.m. on the 1st of March. Now, just to clear a few things, sometimes people do think that DARE is Susie, or DARE is linked to Susie, or anything of that sort. So DARE is not Susie. And I know when you're going into college, there's a lot of applications, there's a lot going on, there's a lot to think about, and it's easy to get things mixed up, and it's easy to think that, oh, sure, these offices can share some of my information. No, DARE is DARE, Susie is Susie, and those are different. And sometimes because of GDPR, where you apply, and if another office requires information, they have to get it from you, not from anyone else. So if you apply to DARE, you should also apply for Susie if you think you'd be eligible. And Susie would have their information up on their website. I won't touch on it too much. It is just to clarify that DARE is not Susie. Susie has its own eligibility criteria, which is different from DARE. It's about your nationality, how long you've been in the country, and if you're progressing on the NFQ levels or in your education. And there is approved colleges that you can apply for Susie for. And then there's the income thresholds that you have to meet. So DARE and Susie are different. If you need to apply for Susie, please do that. You can check on their website, and also you can, on your CAO form, do take the Susie option as well, and apply early as well. There is a timeline for Susie. What I would recommend you to do is to go on the Susie website if you want to apply for Susie, because it is different from DARE. That is the key message here. And as well, if you have any questions at the end, you can ask. Again, the DARE and HERE timelines. As I said, if you go on the on the handbook on the accesscollege.ie website, you can download the handbook. If you want, you can print just the page with the timelines, stick it up somewhere, and just make sure that as you go, if you want, you tick and you make sure that you do not miss any deadlines. So the supporting documents closing date is the 15th of March. So the DARE and HERE closing date, let me start there, is the 1st of March. You have to make sure that you've indicated that you want to apply for these by the 1st of March, 2024 by 5 p.m. And then the supporting documentation closing date is the 15th of March. And then to get the notification of eligibility would be late June. So the key thing from this presentation at the moment, as I'm aware that we're at the start of it, is to make sure that you indicate that you want to apply for these schemes, and make sure that you submit the documents required before the closing date, which is the 15th of March, 2024. And then again, just to remember that you can it's easy to miss the key steps. It's easy to miss that you've actually submitted it, to make sure you've sent something, you've posted something. Just make sure you double check, triple check if you have to. If you're doing the application with someone else, 2 eyes are better than one, and it's easy when someone is helping you to apply. So do make sure that you submit it, check it, and send it. And then just to say that you can apply for both there and here. So applicants who are both there and here eligible will be prioritized by colleges when allocating reduced point place. So here is basically the access route for students with so disadvantaged in social and economical backgrounds. So you can apply for that if you feel you'd be eligible for that as well. And then the next thing then is that there will be information sessions for both the here and there. So just keep an eye on the accesscollege.ie just to see when they would have those. I have a date for those, which is the 13th of January 2024. So after Christmas break, if you do need a refresher on what I've touched on today, if you do need to make sure you're on the right track, I would encourage you to attend those information days and just ask the questions that you would have once you have started your application. I know it's different if you haven't started now, and all this information will feel like overload, but once you start, once you're in it, you might remember some of the things that I've mentioned, and you think, oh, okay, I should have probably asked this, or I have a question on this. Attend the virtual application information days and ask your questions. And then you're probably wondering, when after application, when will I hear back? You did see the timeline there. You will get an email notification about your DARE application outcome once the Living Cert examinations are over in late June. So you log into your CAO application to view your DARE application outcome. So do take a note of your login details. Do make sure that you're not logged out of your account, and you'll hear about your application outcome in late June. For any further information, the CAO website is there. accesscollege.ie is there. If you want to get more information on SUSI, do go on the SUSI website. And if you want to learn more about maybe the NFQ levels, the qualification education progression, qualifax.ie. And yeah, so do visit accesscollege.ie and look through it. If you have any questions, go to the FAQs, the frequently asked questions. They're really good. And then if you still have questions after that, do pick up the phone, call a DARE representative in any of the colleges that you wish to go to, and just to get more information on the application process. But what I would encourage you to do, take a note of the deadlines, get started, review your application, make sure that you have done all the steps, and hopefully it will be a positive outcome. And that is the end of my slide. I hope I didn't run through it too much and do some people on the way. But I do have a few minutes, I believe, of questions.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Thuba. Really clear and really informative session. I think it's so nice to hear the scheme broken down piece by piece, section by section, because I know we get questions about it all the time. So it's a really helpful session. I think having that recorded too is very useful. I think we'll use it a lot in the future.